How's everybody doing? We're a little lightheaded over here because we're in the fast of Esther, Tina's Esther. Excuse me. So it's a minor fast, meaning unlike Yom Kippur, it's not a 25-hour fast, or Tisha B'Av, the ninth of Av, also 25-hour fast. But it's a full daytime fast, right? So if you got up before the crack of dawn, and here would have had to be before 5 a.m., you could eat a little food then, and then we're not going to be able to eat food until tonight, until the fast ends officially, which is at the end of sunset. But then the tradition is, and then you hear the Megillah. Right, so we're gonna go to shul tonight, to synagogue, and we'll do mincha, and then there's a special Torah reading and Haftorah reading for a fast day. Because this is the fast of Esther, then we'll have the evening service, including the Megillah, and then, please God, we'll come home and have a nice meal. So just a little lightheaded here. Let's light up the darkness. And before I forget, no class tomorrow on Purim. I was hoping to still have our class on Purim, but we just have too many obligations here in our community, in our neighborhood. Just got to go to various people's houses, deliver gifts, etc. Have some alcohol, which is just part of Purim. So no class tomorrow. We'll resume our regular schedule on Wednesday. And the next page, 43, is not a super short one. So we might not do the double daf on that day. We might wait a day or two until it makes more sense to do 2 pages in one day. But at any rate, I'll let you know that on Wednesday. The point is, no class tomorrow on Purim. And yes, class resume at the regular time, 6 p.m. on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific. Okay, who's with us? Bella in Florida, Rob in California. Glenn says, bring it on. Bring it on. All right. Richard in Scottsdale, Arizona. Paula in Chicago. And the other Paula in the great Northwest. Lynn checking in from North Texas. Welcome, everyone. Today's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by our very dear cousin, Karen Kemeny, for the healing of our other cousin, Carlos. May he have a complete and speedy recovery. May we only hear good news. And Karen, Karincita, may you and the whole mishpacha be showered in blessings, even more than your ample imagination could conceive. And we say amen. Thank you so much for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. Let's say amen. If you would like to sponsor an episode of AT Daily, donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. Nina will put the link in the comments. As I've mentioned a few times, because of directing the movie and now cutting the movie, which I'm doing just all hours of the day, we haven't been able to do our normal fundraising, so we're way behind on the fundraising. It'll be a bit of a struggle, just to make payroll and to keep the lights on. So, we'll manage, but we would certainly appreciate support for accidentaltalmudist.org, our nonprofit. It's big bang for the buck, right? And giving on Purim is definitely a big deal. Now, even though we won't have class tomorrow on Purim, we will go live at noon Pacific to do our annual reading of the Megillah, the book of Esther, in English. So we will do that at noon Pacific, and we'll have the donate button on. Donations on Purim are not going to go to our organization. They're just going to pass through us, so you get the tax benefit, but we're going to donate all that we raise tomorrow to the poor, to the needy. That's one of the mitzvahs of Purim, is to give gifts to the poor, also to give gifts to each other, to read the Megillah, etc. Okay, today's daf is Mem Beis, page 42 here in Tractate Nazir, the 17th volume of the Talmud. We are in chapter 6. Today we're going to complete our discussion of Mishnah number 2, And now we're going to get into a series of short Mishnas and Gemaras. So we're going to do Mishnas 3, 4, and 5, in addition to completing our discussion of number 2. All right, we picked this up on page 42, right near the top. The Gemara returns to the Mishnah that teaches that a Nazir, a Mitzorah, and the Levium originally, right? So this is with regarding the requirement to shave, which these three groups share, right? So the Nazir can't shave while he's a Nazir, but he must shave at the conclusion of his Naziris. And actually, if he should become impure for a corpse during his Naziris, he would shave then as well. So that's an obligatory shaving. And the Mitzorah, one who, when the temple was standing and Tsaras was still present, if somebody contracts Tsaras and becomes a Mitzorah, part of his purification is shaving. And the Levium, when the children of Israel went out of Egypt and we received the original instruction in the Torah to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and to consecrate the priests and the whole tribe of Levi to the service of God and the holy things surrounding the temple. So when the Levium were consecrated, they too had to shave their whole bodies. And as we've learned, all three of these, when they are commanded to shave, must shave with a razor and not with a scissors or a wood plane or something like that. If they do it with another implement, they have not fulfilled their obligation. So the master said above, and with regard to all of them, the Nazir, the Mitzorah, and the Levite, during their original consecration for the Levites, the master said, and with regard to all of them, if they shaved with an implement other than a razor, or if they left 2 hairs uncut, they have done nothing. Right? So it's when they have a commandment to shave everything, then they have to shave everything. If they leave 2 hairs, then they have done nothing. So Rav Acha, the son of Rav Ika, said, that is to say, that the principle, the majority of an entity is considered like all of it, applies by Torah law. You're like, wait, didn't you just say that if he shaves his whole body but leaves 2 hairs, it's like he didn't do anything at all? And now you're telling me that the majority of an entity is considered like all of it, and that this applies by Torah law? How do I derive that? And the Gemara explains. From where do we learn this? The Gemara explains that the principle that even by Torah law, when you do the majority of something, you've done all of it. This is derived from the fact that the Merciful One revealed in the Torah and specified with regard to a Nazir, on the 7th day he shall shave it, despite the fact that the same verse already stated, and he shall shave his head on the day of his cleansing. And this teaches that it is only in the case here of the Nazir that he does not fulfill the mitzvah of shaving until there is the removal of all of it, i.e. shaving part of his head. Right? The Nazir doesn't have to shave his whole body, he has to shave his whole head. And if he leaves 2 hairs, he has not fulfilled his obligation. But it is only with respect to the Nazir that he has to shave his entire head, every single hair, or he hasn't done anything. Otherwise, more generally in Torah law, if you've done the majority, it's good enough. So this shows that in general, the majority of an entity is like all of it. Now, Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rabbi Hanina, objects to this. This verse, on the 7th day he shall shave it, is written with regard to a ritually impure Nazir, not a pure one, whereas the law in the Mishnah applies even to the pure Nazir, right? Pure meaning he did not become impure, either by a corpse or by some other kind of impurity. He would have to, as we learned, even if a Nazir becomes a Mitzorah, he does have to go through the purification of a Mitzorah, even while he's a Nazir. Now this shows that the above inference is invalid according to Rabbi Yosef. Now they laughed at this difficulty in the West, meaning the sages in Israel laughed at this difficulty as opposed to the sages in Babylonia. Now after all, from where do we derive the law that an impure Nazir shaves with a razor? right? This is the shaving of the Mitzorah. Even though he's a Nazir, he shaves with a razor. It is derived from the law of a pure Nazir. So if so, let the case of a pure Nazir come and derive the following law from the case of an impure Nazir. Just as with regard to an impure Nazir, if he leaves 2 hairs, he has done nothing. Here too, if a pure Nazir leaves 2 hairs, he has done nothing. A different way to derive the same principle. And on the same topic, Abaye raised a dilemma with regard to a Nazir who shaved, and he left 2 hairs, which is not considered an act of shaving. If the hair, right, so he has to shave his whole head when he completes his Nazirs. And if he left 2 hairs, then it's like he did nothing, right? Because the Nazir has extra obligations, very high level of sanctity, and at the conclusion of his Nazirs, he has to do the job exactly right, shave his whole head. But what if he didn't? So with regard to a Nazir who shaved and he left 2 hairs, which is not considered an act of shaving. So if the hairs on his head then grew, and he again shaved, and this time he only shaved those 2 hairs, what is the law? Do these hairs invalidate the fulfillment of his obligation or not? Has he now completed the initial act of shaving, or is the shaving of those last 2 hairs, which is undertaken at a later time when the rest of his hair has grown in, is this considered of no significance, and he must now shave his entire head again? And similarly, Rava raised a dilemma with regard to a Nazir who shaved and he left 2 hairs, and afterward he shaved one of them, and the other one fell out of its own accord. What is the law? Is this considered shaving one's entire head or not? And Rav Achav Difti said to Ravina, is Rava raising a dilemma as to whether one can shave his head 1 hair at a time? How does this case differ from that of one who shaves his entire head 1 hair at a time, which is a fulfillment of an obligation? Rather, say that the dilemma is like this. If 1 hair fell out and he shaved the other one, what is the law? Right? There were 2 left, so he hasn't completed his shaving. And then, he needs to finish those 2. But one of them fell out by itself, and then he shaved the other one. So did he complete his shaving or not? And Ravina said to him, in that case, there is no shaving here, and there is no hair here. And the Gemara expresses surprise at this expression. If there is no hair here, then there is no shaving here, as no hair remains. So then there is shaving. So the Gemara explains, this is what he said. Even though there is no hair here, as only 1 hair remains, right? 1 hair is not considered significant. It takes 2 hairs. That's why if you left 1 hair, then you did shave your head. If you left 2, that's considered significant, and that's why you did not complete your shaving. So if one of them fell out, he can't complete the shaving because there were 2 left, and now he can't shave them both, so he did not fulfill his obligation to shave at the completion of his Nazirs. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 2. Here's Mishnah number 3. A Nazir may shampoo, and the Hebrew word is chofef. A Nazir may shampoo his head and separate his hairs manually without concern that hairs might fall out. However, he may not comb his hair. Now, we learned that a Nazir, at the conclusion of his Nazirs, he has to shave his head. While he's a Nazir, not only can he not shave his head, he cannot remove any hair with any implement. Not with scissors, not with an electric razor, not with tweezers, not with depilatory cream. He cannot remove any of his hair. Okay, so can he comb his hair? Now, this is actually this is related, as we'll see, to the dispute that we encountered way at the beginning of our journey in Brachas and especially in Tractate Shabbos, between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. And what this is Rabbi Shimon would permit you to would permit you to move a chair on Shabbos in a house with a dirt floor, even though moving it might leave a furrow in the ground, which is considered like a prohibited act of work. Because like making a furrow in dirt is like, it's like farming, right? It's like plowing, right? It's like plowing. And Rabbi Yehuda would prohibit moving the chair because it might leave that furrow, right? The chance that you might do prohibited work is enough for Rabbi Yehuda to say that's prohibited. Rabbi Shimon would permit it because it was not your intention to create a furrow. That is just a kind of side issue that might happen, and it's not for sure that it would happen, and so Rabbi Shimon would permit you to move the chair. But Rabbi Shimon would agree that if it was inevitable that you would create the furrow, then even though you weren't moving the chair in order to create the furrow, if the furrow was going to absolutely inevitably come about, then you're prohibited to move the chair. But if there's any chance you might move the chair and not create a furrow, you can move the chair. So here, Rabbi Shimon might say that, can you comb your hair if hair might fall out, right? So then your intention is not to pull hair out. It's just to, groom your appearance, comb your hair. And so you should be allowed to comb your hair. But Rabbi Shimon would agree that if hair always comes out when we comb our heads, and, probably it always does, then it's going to be prohibited, right? So that's the idea. You can't remove any of your hair. This Nazir is not sitting there trying to pull hair out, but can he do activities that will probably result in loss of hair or inevitably result in loss of hair? That's the questions we're examining, right? So the Mishnah says that a Nazir may shampoo his head and separate manually, meaning he can shampoo, right? My hair makes no sense, the explanation, but if you had a person with long hair, like you can run your hands through your hair and sort of, fix your head up a little bit with your fingers, because that's not going to always result in loss of hair. But if you're going to start running a comb through your hair, for sure some hair is going to come out, and for that reason, the Mishnah prohibits combing the hair when you are in a Nazir during your term of Naziris. Now the Gemara clarifies this. Who is the Tana who maintains that a Nazir may shampoo with his fingers and separate hairs with his fingers? It is Rabbi Shimon, who says an unintentional act is permitted, even if hairs do fall out as a result of this action. As he did not intend this to happen, the action is permitted. Yet in the latter clause of the Mishnah, which states, however, he may not comb his hair, we have come to the opinion of the rabbis. Although the Nazir also does not intend to tear out any hair when he combs, it is nevertheless prohibited. Now this leads to a surprising conclusion that the first clause represents the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, and the latter clause is the opinion of the rabbis. And Rabbah said, no. The entire Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, as he maintains that anyone who combs his hair intends to remove stray hairs. In other words, it's inevitable that you will pull out some hair when you comb it, and that's why Rabbi Shimon would also prohibit using the comb, even though you were only trying to groom your appearance. Since it's inevitable that hair will come out, that's going to be prohibited. And that's it from Mishnah number 3. Here comes Mishnah number 4 here in chapter 6. Rabbi Yishmael says, a Nazir may not shampoo his hair with dirt, because this causes the hair to fall out. You're like, whoa. Who is shampooing his hair with dirt? Here's a little note about that. In ancient times, when there was no suitable soap available for washing and for hygiene, people used various oil-dissolving materials to shampoo their heads and hair. Plants such as aloe and minerals such as soda carbonate, usually mined from natural deposits of natron, were suitable for this purpose, and the coarseness of the minerals and the amount of earth that they contained generally led to the removal of some hairs. Okay, so when you couldn't go down to CVS or Walgreens and buy shampoo, maybe you would end up using a substance that either was dirt or contained some dirt in it to, wash all the other stuff out of your hair. You'd use some grit, and then the water would remove the dirt, right? So it's not that they were being gross, it made sense. So Rabbi Yishmael says a Nazir may not do this. He may not shampoo his hair with earth because this causes more hair to fall out than if you just rinsed with water. The Gemara. A dilemma was raised before the sages. What is the precise wording of the Mishnah? Do we learn because it removes hair, i.e. earth in general removes hair, or do we perhaps learn because of that which removes hair? In other words, although some types of dirt do not remove hair, is all dirt prohibited because you might be using the kind of dirt that does remove hair? And the Gemara explains the difference in the wording is where there's a type of earth that does not remove hair. If you say that we learned in the Mishnah because it removes hair, then in the case where we know that the dirt does not remove hair, it is all right to shampoo with that substance. However, if you say that our text reads because of that which removes hair, in other words, we prohibit all dirt because some dirt removes hair, then all dirt would be prohibited. And this question was not answered. The dilemma shall stand. Teiku. Mishnah number 5. We're booking now. Mishnah number 5. A Nazir who was drinking wine all day is liable to receive only one set of lashes. But if people said to him during the course of the day, do not drink, and nevertheless he continues to drink, then he is liable for each and every time that he was warned and proceeded to have a drink of wine anyway. If a Nazir kept shaving all day, he is liable to receive only one set of lashes for violating the prohibition on shaving during his Naziris. However, if people said to him, do not shave, and he continues to shave after each warning, then he is liable for each and every time he was warned. And if he became ritually impure from a corpse many times all day, he is liable to receive only one set of lashes. If they said to him, do not become impure, and he continues to become impure, then he is liable for each and every time that he was warned. Now we're on 42b. A dispute among the Amoraim, the sages of the Gemara, was stated. Rabbah said that Rav Huna said. The Torah stated a law involving a Nazir in a categorical verse, quote, he shall not become impure for his father, for his mother, for his brother, or for his sister when they die, right? Meaning the Nazir is not allowed to come into contact with a corpse. So even if a close relative of his dies, he cannot assist in the burial for that person because he is not allowed to become impure for a corpse while he is a Nazir. Now this includes all manners of contracting impurity imparted by a corpse, whether ritual impurity imparted by contact with the corpse or by carrying the corpse, or in a tent, meaning that you're under the same roof with the corpse in the same room. And when the Torah states, he shall not come near to a dead body in the previous verse, so it serves to warn him with regard to contracting impurity from a corpse in any manner, as above, and to warn him with regard to entering an enclosure with a corpse, which is a unique prohibition applicable to a Nazir that is added by the phrase, he shall not come near to a dead body. And he is liable separately for each. However, with regard to one contracting impurity from a corpse and again contracting impurity from a corpse, the verse does not warn him. And therefore he is liable to receive only one set of lashes, even if he continually violates this prohibition on one day. So Rav Yosef says in the form of a note, by God, Rav Huna actually says that he is separately liable even for contracting impurity from a corpse and again contracting impurity from a corpse, not only if he entered an enclosure with a corpse. As Rav Huna says, with regard to a Nazir who is standing in a cemetery, so he is already ritually impure, right? Because he has corpse tumah from walking over graves. So he entered a cemetery, so now he's already ritually impure. And they extended his corpse to him, meaning he was in the cemetery and they said, here, help carry the body of your father to the burial site, right? They extended a corpse to him. And similarly, if they extended another corpse to him and he touched it, he is liable. But why is he liable if he has already become impure by standing in the cemetery? Rather, isn't it correct to conclude from this that Rav Huna said he is separately liable even for contracting impurity from a corpse and again contracting impurity from another corpse? And Abaye raised an objection to Rav Yosef from a Baraisa. With regard to a priest who had a corpse placed on his shoulder, a priest also is not allowed to become impure for the dead, right? That's a rule for all Kohanim. With regard to a priest who had a corpse placed on his shoulder, and they extended his corpse, i.e. the corpse of his relative, to him, and similarly if they extended a different corpse to him and he touched it. Now one might have thought that he should be liable even for this contact. Therefore the verse states, with regard to the prohibition against a high priest becoming impure, and he shall not profane the sanctuary of his God. And this teaches that the prohibition of impurity applies to one who is not yet profaned, excluding this one who is already profaned and standing in that state of ritual impurity. So therefore, you would think that if a Nazir already violated his Naziris by entering a cemetery, then he might as well help with the burial, because he's not going to be liable for an additional transgression if he does that. Now, Rav Yosef said to him, but if, as you claim, one is not liable for contracting one impurity after another, the Mishnah should pose a difficulty for you. As we learned in the Mishnah, if a Nazir became ritually impure from corpses many times all day, he is liable to receive only one set of lashes. But if somebody said to him, do not become impure, and he continues to become impure, then he is liable for each and every time he was warned. But why should this be so? If he was already impure and standing in a state of impurity, then according to your argument, he's done nothing at all. So why would a warning then result in an additional liability? Rather, the Mishnah and the Baraisa pose a difficulty for each other. So the Gemara answers, no, this is not difficult. As here, the Baraisa is referring to a concurrent contact with impurity, i.e., when he touched the second corpse, he was still in contact with the first. So he is not liable for the second impurity. Conversely, the Mishnah is referring to impurity that was not a concurrent contact. He touched the second corpse only after he had separated himself from the first, and then he was warned not to become impure again, and then he touched the second corpse, and therefore he is liable for each impurity. Now the Gemara asks, in this law, that a Nazir is exempt from being flogged for a second contact with a corpse in the case of concurrent impurity, does it apply by Torah law? Didn't Rav Yitzhak Bar Yosef say that Rav Yanai said? They stated the principle of concurrent impurity only with regard to partaking of teruma and consecrated foods. In other words, that one who touches a person who is in contact with a corpse is ritually impure with impurity imparted by a corpse for 7 days. Right? If you touch a human corpse, that's the heaviest kind of tumah, ritual impurity. You have to go through a 7-day purification to be purified from that. If you touch a person who touched a corpse, right, he has corpse tumah, he can transmit impurity, but you don't receive 7-day impurity from him. The impurity has sort of gone down a notch. But if a person is currently touching a corpse and you touch him, then the 7-day impurity is transmitted to you. That's what we're learning here. However, with regard to a Nazir, i.e. the question of whether a Nazir is considered ritually impure and has to bring offerings due to this contact, and with regard to one who performs the ritual of the Pesach, bringing the Paschal lamb when the temple is standing, this law does not apply. And if you say that this law applies by Torah law, what is different between the case of teruma, consecrated foods, and the case of a Nazir? And the Gemara explains that there are two different types of concurrent impurity. Here, where there is a difference between teruma and a Nazir, it is referring to concurrent contact of one person with another person. If one touched another while the other was in contact with the corpse, the impurity of the first is by rabbinic law. By contrast, there it is referring to concurrent contact of a person with a corpse. One who is touching a corpse is considered linked to impurity by Torah law with regard to his second contact with a corpse. So the Gemara summarizes this. The fact that one who is touching a corpse is not liable for contact with a second corpse leads to Rabba's aforementioned ruling. However, with regard to contracting impurity from a corpse, you touched it, then you stopped touching it, and then you touched another one. If you do that several times in a day and you're a Nazir, you're liable for only one set of lashes. But if you were warned each time, don't do that, then you would be liable to a separate set of lashes for each time that you were warned and you proceeded anyway. And that's in accordance with our Mishnah. And so if a person contracted impurity imparted by a corpse and then touched another corpse while still in contact with the first, he is not liable for a second impurity unless he was warned. Why? Because he has already become impure and is standing in his state of ritual impurity. Now the Gemara asks, well, if so, with regard to impurity and entering, one should say likewise that when he enters an enclosure containing a corpse, when he is in contact with a corpse, he has already become impure and is standing in his impurity. Why should he be flogged again for entering the enclosure, which is its own prohibition only for the Nazir? And Rabbi Yochanan said, in this case of impurity and entering, one must again distinguish between two instances. I'm almost done. If you have questions or comments, get them in. Here, where Rav Huna said that one will be liable for both contractions of impurity, it is referring to one who is pure and who went into a house that contained a corpse, rendering him liable twice. And the entering the house and the ritual impurity imparted by the corpse in a tent, i.e. that which is under the same roof, occurred simultaneously, and therefore he is liable twice, once for contracting ritual impurity and once for violating the particular prohibition against a Nazir entering an enclosure with a corpse in it. Aren't we lucky that we're no longer able to take the oath of Naziris, which the sages discouraged, because it's super, as we see, it's super complicated. And if you were to undertake, if the temple was standing so that you could bring the offerings at the conclusion of Naziris, okay, so then it would be possible to be a Nazir, but it's the sort of thing where you might, just, in an emotional moment say, I want to do this and take the oath of Naziris, and then you wouldn't be aware of all these laws, and you could easily make mistakes and violate them, and then, keep resetting your clock, and you might end up being a Nazir for much longer than you planned, right? As always, you have to be very, very careful with the words that leave your mouth. Now, we can't take oaths of Naziris anymore, but that principle of be very, very careful about the words that leave your mouth, that does still apply. We actually had that lesson even in last week's Torah portion, where Moses was frustrated, with the Jewish people and his role as leader during the wandering in the desert. And he said it was too difficult for him, and God was angry with the people, and he's like, Moses said, write me out of your book. And then God said, well, I'm not going to do that, but Moses was written out of that Torah portion. Last week's Torah portion was the only one after, Moses comes on the scene that Moses is not, his name is not in it at all. And so, we learn that also with the case of Jacob when he's fleeing from Lavan with his wives and his children. And somebody takes, these little idols of Lavan, who was an idolater. And he chases after them and he says, and why did you run off with my family without saying goodbye? And on top of that, you stole my idols. And Jacob was like, nobody in my group stole idols. If you find the idols on some member of my party, let him be executed. And the fact is, Rachel took them, and it may be because she didn't want her father to continue to practice idolatry. For whatever reason, she took them. Now, the father, Lavan, never found them on her. And so, she was never executed for that theft. But she died an untimely death at a young age. And, because the words of a tzaddik have power, right? Our words have power. And that's why we really have to always try to speak in a positive way about ourselves, our loved ones, the people we care about, the whole world. If it's possible to avoid speaking about negative things that have happened, will happen, could happen, it's better to do that and really watch what words you use. Okay. Questions here on Nazir 42. And Nina's telling me no questions or comments. Okay. So, no class tomorrow, Purim. We just have too many Purim obligations, but we will do the reading of the book of Esther, live reading of the Megillah in English, live on Facebook and YouTube at noon Pacific tomorrow on Purim Day. If you're fasting, may you have an easy fast and a completion of the fast. I'm going to get off, do the summary that I do at the end of class, and then going on to afternoon services, evening service, reading the Megillah, and then we'll break the fast. Okay, my friends, may you have a wonderful, wonderful Purim, and hopefully I'll see you at our live